Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Capitalist Investor. As always, you have me, Diamond Hands D, and we got the crew back again today, Tony the Tiger, and back by popular demand, Dave Abate.
Great to be here.
We got a little more planning corner topics, so we'll talk about some common IRA mistakes because, as we talked about a little bit last time, common IRA mistakes that we see out there.
Well, you know what? I'll even take it just a little bit higher. It's like common, tax deferred. You want to have a tax deferred account. That would be the most ideal thing you want to have. So whether it's a Roth or traditional is where you kind of start. I like the question of, or like, I love the Roth. I've been investing. And I'm like, why? I don't want to pay taxes, right? But, like you do get a tax deduction for that contribution right now. And there's probably a good chance that you'll be in a lower tax bracket when you retire than when you're working. I'll make that assumption. That's not always true, but I kind of see it because I actually met with somebody the other day, and they were telling me how upset they were that they didn't contribute more to the Roth because now they have a $1 million traditional IRA, and they're like, I owe taxes on every single dollar, and I'm like, I get it, right? And they're like, yeah, and then they're going to force me to take it out when I'm 73. I'm like, yeah, I understand that too, but I'm like, how much money do you need to retire? Like what does your retirement look like? I need $6,000 a month. Okay, that sounds like $72,000 and net. Okay, well, let's take Social Security out of the equation. Let's call that, $32,000. So now you need $40,000 more. So what is that? Like, okay, you have your traditional. You have to take out $50,000 to live your life, right? You have $1 million IRA. When RMDs start, you have to take out 3.65% year one. If you take out $50,000, you just took out 5%. Problem solved. Like people are like, but I owe. I'm like, yeah, but you got the deduction in your highest years, and I just did the math for you. Taking $50,000 out in Social Security, you're going to be in probably the 10 or 12% bracket. Like there, the again, we talked about this on the last episode. The information you sometimes capture off of the media sites like Google or even Yahoo Finance or whatever those might be, like, hey, Roths are better, blah. I get it. I really do. A nice blend is nice, but you have to understand where you are today and where you are projected to be when you retire.
Yes, there's pros and cons, right, for both sides. And, there's some hidden things that a lot of people don't know about, like, hey, it's possible, right, to get that tax deduction in a traditional IRA or 401k, and then once you hit, if you play with the rules, you hit age 70 and a half, you can actually make like qualified charitable distributions from that IRA and completely escape taxation.
Yeah, so, and that's definitely, like, there's little like tax moves that we can do, but the biggest thing though is the Roth versus traditional when you're saving into your 401k. Actually, it's almost like splitting hairs. Like, like you're splitting hairs on the amount of money that you need to be saving, because the next thing I want to talk about is don't procrastinate. Just start saving. Whether it's in a Roth or traditional, like if you're not saving because you're waiting, like, I don't know which one to do. I'm like, just do one. Just pick a direction, and then you can reevaluate a week, a month, a year later. And then you can change it, but if you don't do it, if you procrastinate, that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest problem I see, or not saving enough sometimes. So that is another common mistake. So first of all, recap 1 and 2, or first one, Roth versus traditional, could be splitting hairs, right? In the grand scheme of things. But number 2 is very important. You gotta save first and foremost, and save as much as you can afford.
And I would say the longer that I do this, and the more plans that I do and present, it's really good to have money in all 3 tax buckets. Mm-hmm. So non-qualified, qualified, and tax-free. That is a big advantage once you get there, once you get to retirement, to have money in each one of those buckets, because of, spending isn't like a smooth thing, right? Sometimes things pop up, sometimes people want, in retirement, they want to pay, a big chunk or the whole thing when they buy a car. So having the flexibility to have money in all three of those tax buckets is an important thing. So yeah, just saving is always going to be a good idea. That's one you don't have to Google.
Yep.
If you start saving. That's really the first battle that you have to win.
Yep. Another common mistake. Won't spend too much time on it, but just know that if you're married and you're married filing jointly, you can contribute for a spouse, whether they're working or not working. Just another. If you look at your finances as a household, that's just another way to save more money. So just always remember that you can save into your IRAs if you're filing jointly as a married couple. And then the other fourth one is that sometimes, and I've done this in the past, where I've looked at somebody's, their tools. They had a 401k and they had a traditional IRA. And I looked at the options in their 401k and they had target funds, right? Or just very kind of, I'll call them crappy mutual funds after I did an analysis of everything. And that is where, if we can not look at the individual accounts and how they're performing, but if we can take a look at how everything is playing together on an aggregate level, maybe I can say, man, the equities that I can invest in your 401k stink. They've always underperformed. They're not very good. We can actually do a lot better job in your IRA with all the equities. And then I can sit there and argue and say, I don't know if I can pick better bonds than what you have available, because bonds are bonds and they're not the growth engine inside of your savings, right? The stocks, the equity exposure is. So I've done it before where I'm like, hey, let's make your 401k, let's keep all the bonds in there, and then in your 401 or in your IRA we put the equity exposure, or maybe just have the slight equity exposure in the 401k. Find some kind of balance. I've done that before because there's a possibility that your investment options in your 401k are just so bad.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting on it again, Tony, the importance of making decisions holistically instead of just in a vacuum.
Right.
Like understanding all the moving parts and the pieces on the chessboard, so that when you do, make a decision in one of the buckets, it coordinates and plays well with the other pieces and moving parts.
Right.
That's so important.
Yep. So diversification tools to your 401k. Again, get exposure to the things that you can't capture in your 401k in your other investment accounts. Whether that's maybe an individual stock or commodities, like, hey, you like gold, but I can't buy it in my 401k. Okay, use your IRA for that. Bitcoin, right? Now that we can do ETFs, but your 401k won't allow it. Things like that.
And even as simple as the one I've been seeing lately is in the 401k plans. A lot of people just have straight S&P 500 index exposure. And as we all know, that thing's heavily tilted towards the growth side of things in the equity world, which is, in some people would argue, has gotten very overheated. So now, how can we lean against that overexposure to growth to get you more a balanced situation?
Exactly.
Thanks, everyone, for listening this week. If you guys have any questions or comments or show ideas, hit us up at info@swpconnect.com, and we'll talk to you next week.
The opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.